Welcome to Beyond Wealth, Success Unscripted with Matt Calnan. Discover the personal drive, professional journeys, and business strategies that have made a real impact. It's success from the inside out.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. Today we're chatting with Zack Anderson. Zack is an experienced leader with a strong background in experiential learning and program management. As an executive at Telus Spark Science Centre, Zack has overseen a variety of educational and interpretive programs, while also serving as a director on the Alberta Museums Association Board. With over a decade of experience as a certified interpretive guide, he excels in public speaking, program development, and strategic direction. So first of all, welcome to the show, Zack. And do you want to start off by telling us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing?
Yeah, thank you for having me. So I have a pretty privileged career, I have to say. What I get to do is I get to work with the teams that connect people to science at the Science Centre. There's many scientific euphemisms you can use, like planting a seed in someone and having it grow into a tree as they, go home and say, wow, I saw this thing, or I experienced this thing at the Science Centre, and I want to learn more about it. Or I work at Telus Spark, but lighting a spark, right? Or being a catalyst, or I'm sure there's many other scientific comparisons one could use. But the whole general idea is we kind of live in this world where content is just readily accessible, right? So the way I always say what we do at the Science Centre, and what I do as the leader of that team, is we're not here to teach you about the periodic table of elements, right? But we are here to tell you about why gold or plutonium or molybdenum are pretty darn cool.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's great. I had my kids actually at the Science Centre. Oh, it might have been like 4 or 5, 6 months ago, something like
nice.
that.
Yeah, right on.
And it was awesome. We've been a few times. I'm down in Lethbridge, so it's a little bit more of a trek for us to get up there.
Commute,
but definitely awesome. The kids love it. And for those people that haven't been, well, actually, I'll give kind of the intro for those that haven't been, but maybe you can kind of explain a little bit more on it. But it's really cool because they get so much hands-on experience, and they get to experiment with all these different cool things. Do you want to dive into maybe what that looks like?
Yeah, so our Science Center opened up in 2011, and it was really modeled on inquiry design. So that's kind of a teachery jargon, basically, for asking questions and having people explore by doing, right? So the whole mantra of Telus Spark Science Centre is having folks get the chance to try things, get in there, and come to the learnings. And one of the things that I think is really, really neat about it is it's not intended to have one specific outcome. So the exhibits, the programs, the content that we have, it's intended to be, you take from it what you want, right? And whether it inspires you to, for example, when you came with your kids, you might have done some like the bed of nails, right? There's one of our famous exhibits is, you sit there and you press and nails come up and it feels like you have nails digging into you, but it doesn't hurt you too bad because, of course, the surface area that the nails are poking into you distributes the weight so that it's not actually hurting you. So even though they're real nails. So when you come out from that, are you going to learn about, distribution of force over an area? Maybe. Are you going to learn that, oh, it didn't hurt when I laid down on a bed of nails, right? And why is that? I should look into that. Maybe, right? Are you going to learn, I had a cool experience with nails and force, and, I was a little bit apprehensive, and now I'm a little more comfortable, and things like that. Willingness to take chances, and those kind of soft skill development. That's a big part of it too. So it's not just about the scientific content outcome in those experiences. It's also about the broader soft skill experience that folks have. So there's multiple outputs to every exhibit and thing that we bring in, with the idea being that it's about connecting people with science, but it's also just about making good humans.
Yeah. Well, there was other people there with us as well, and the range of kids that we had were it was 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, I think. And probably each one of them, to go back to your example on the bed of nails, probably each one of them is going to come out of it with something different based on their experiences, their age, their education level. So that's kind of
100%.
cool to see as well, right?
100%. And I think it's really, really neat to compare, like, yeah, as you said, like a 4-year-old to an 11-year-old, you
Mhm.
know, what they have and what they experience it, what do they come with, you know, preconceived notions, expectations, and those kind of things before they do an experience, and then what do they leave with? And then the same can be said for adults too, right? Like, I know obviously science centers are our kids are very, very good at getting into things and trying things out. As adults, we're a little bit less inclined to take chances or do things, especially that might make us look silly,
Yeah,
or try things out. And also, there's that inherent thought that I think many adults have, myself included. I don't want to try something if it's going to take away an experience from a kid, right?
right.
You know, so the science center really tries to engage adults too. So a lot of the, especially the newer things that we build, we try to keep them adults in mind at all times, right? So one of our guiding lights is that we say it's built for adults and kids like it too, which is our way of saying it's for everyone, the
Yep.
design. So and it's important to remember that in these experiences, it's not just the person, whether it's a child or an adult or a grandparent or whomever that's doing it, that's getting that direct output, that's the only one having an experience, because everyone who's around them and supporting them, they're having an experience vicariously too, right? You get to see the wow on your kid's face when you know, something like there's a giant explosion or something gets lit on fire, or you know, liquid nitrogen and gets water poured into it, you get this big puff of a cloud and everyone's like, oh, right. And you know, that in and of itself is a great experience, you know, seeing that possible transformative experience happening to someone that you care about, right?
Yeah,
So there's a lot of value and magic in that too.
yeah. How did you get into this field?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a long journey, but I'll give you the Reader's Digest version. So my background is in the sciences, which probably isn't too surprising, but zoology in particular. So I always
Okay.
joke that I have an animal fact for every occasion. But my career started out at the Calgary Zoo, and you know, that was working in different educational programs, delivering interpretive programs, school programs, etc., and just kind of moved my way up. And I really figured I wanted to be a zookeeper. That was what I wanted to do. And I actually had an experience where I was volunteering with the tiger keepers, and I was in the back hallway of the tiger exhibit, picking wet tiger fur out of a drain, which in and of itself is not the most exciting magical thing I've ever experienced. But I had this moment where I was sitting there picking up this wet tiger fur, and I looked up, and they have the things that are called slides, which are the doors that separate the animals from areas that they're not to be in at any given time. And I looked up, and of course, there's a little break in the slides of about like an inch. And what do I see in that inch is tiger eyes staring right at me. And I'm like, oh man, if that slide fails, I am so dead. Like, I am
Yeah,
super dead.
food.
And yeah, and that was the exact moment I decided this isn't for me. But thankfully, at that time, I discovered the magic that you can have when you know, are chatting with someone and you just see that light bulb go off, and
Yeah,
they have that transformative experience, and you know, that you can influence that as an individual. That's pretty special. And so, you know, I worked at the zoo for many years and kind of worked my way up, and then bounced around a little bit to the government of Alberta and Canada Sports Hall of Fame at Canada Olympic Park in Calgary.
yeah,
And then an opportunity came up, and I felt like something was missing. Like, I was, you know, growing through my career, and I just really, something was missing. And I realized it was science, and it was a connection to science. That's like kind of a core part of my being. And so this opportunity came up at the Science Center for a manager of school programs. And a friend of mine I worked with at the zoo said, you should apply for this. So I did. And here we are. And then through being at the Science Center, you know, had the opportunity to move up and take on different roles, and move into the director leadership role right before the pandemic, which was a heck of a time to be taking on the a leadership role at a giant experiential attraction, right?
where you're
So
touching everything. Yeah,
100%. Yeah, that was a heck of a time, but lots of learning and good experience. And, you know, it's been a great ride ever since. So,
yeah. Um, the Science Center is mostly, I'll call it, well, stable is the wrong word, but mostly the exhibits are kind of the same, and then you're introducing new stuff every once in a while, or you might have something come through for a couple months. Is that right?
Yeah, we have both permanent and rotating exhibits.
That is a
So our
much more clear way of saying it than what I just said. Thank you.
You nailed it though. It's a practice, right? But yeah, we do. So our fixed exhibits have been the ones that have been there since the building opened in 2011. And we do recognize that obviously those exhibits, especially if someone has a membership and they're coming multiple times a year, they're going to want different experiences. So bringing in those rotating exhibits is a way to do that. And of course, some of them can have some real strong drawing power. Like, a few years ago, I remember we had Body Worlds, and of course, people are always fascinated by that, and always draws a huge amount of people, right? So it's a way to just, get people interested and excited. But once they're at the Science Center and drawn in, we can change up the programming. So the programming that we offer in a lot of our spaces, even though the core fixed galleries are fixed, excuse me, for the most part, the programming that we do around that and those rotating exhibits, that's what's really creates that new experience, novel experiences each time you come. Right. So, and it's very important that we do that, obviously, right? Because we want people to come and not have the same experience every single time, because then why are they going to come multiple times?
Yeah,
Right?
for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
So it's really, really important. And I should also note that we're actually in the process of updating our permanent galleries as well. So so we just started a big campaign. Our first gallery, we actually have gone out to already get member feedback and school feedback and experts on that. So we're actually in the process of updating our permanent galleries. It's already been announced that we've received a bunch of funding from the provincial government to that end. And we're aiming to have it, rolling out, 2026, 2027, the first gallery, and then the three other main galleries will be fixed or changed over as well, which is very exciting.
Yeah, for sure. Kind of keeping things refreshed and
Yeah,
changing there.
most
Yeah,
up-to-date science, all that good stuff.
yeah. What are some of the challenges in designing those exhibits when you have to keep in mind that they're based on kids and adults? Like, I mean, we want different things, right? Kids
Yeah.
want different things than adults. So what are the challenges behind that?
Yeah, I mean, therein lies the rub a little bit, right? So, adults, if they're coming with their kids, obviously it's a lot easier, right? And families and kids and schools, like those are areas that not just our science center, but science centers in general do quite well. Where there's a bit of a growth opportunity is with, teens, young adults, and especially adults without kids, right? How do they come to the science center? How do they have these experiences? And it's a bit of a balancing act, to be honest, because we have to have these experiences that adults can engage in and have an experience, while also being in mind that we're going to have some days 600 students running around the science center, like the tiny agents of chaos that they are, right? So and that's just the way it is, right? So at some point we have to look at how do we make sure that there's those access points. So so the exhibits can be designed with multiple kind of outcomes again, right? So an adult can have an experience with an exhibit that'll be different than a kid does, but they can still have a different, still both have a good time, right? So kids maybe can just flick a bunch of switches and something happens, or whereas adults can stand and maybe watch a bit more of a show, and things like that. Like one of the galleries that we're currently designing is focused on our land that we find ourselves on, so southern Alberta, and the kind of four main ecosystems, so prairies, mountains, forests, and the river. And basically there's immersive show stuff happening around you while there's kind of the hands-on learning happening. There's bodies on learning, there's 3D projections, projection mapping, but there's also literally a show that changes with the seasons, right? So the intent of that is to have a little bit of something for everyone, and everyone can take something from it. And also part of it's also in the program design. So how do we, if this is what we have as a built experience, how do we design programs that are going to be appealing to kids at certain times and adults at other times, and maybe they're not at the same time, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so you know, there's obviously a ton of nuance I could go into with all that different stuff, but we'd need longer than our scheduled conversation probably to get into that. So.
And what about the challenge between making sure that the education is there, but also making sure that there's a level of fun with it? Is there challenges with that side of it as well?
You know, I actually read a really interesting paper on that a few months ago, and it's this important thing that, you know, all museums, and you know, obviously science centers are a type of museum, as are zoos and aquaria, call them experiential attractions.
Yeah.
It's something they always have to keep in mind, right? So there's a lot of research that supports the fact that the reason people come to places like science centers, like zoos, like museums, it's not to learn something, it's actually to be entertained, right? And that's a fundamental key that places like science centers need to keep in mind, right? It's not just about jamming people with information, it's about making them have a good time and an experience. And but the flip side of that is that yes, people are coming to be entertained, but there's a lot of competition for entertainment out there, right? There's, you know, not only attractions, but there's free attractions like a library. There's Netflix, right? There's YouTube, right? There's going out to your local park, whatever the case may be, right? So there's innumerable different types of competition. So how do you stand out? Well, the reason people choose places like science centers, like museums, like zoos, is because they justify it with educational value.
Yeah.
So, so we have to really keep in mind both. We have to be educational and entertaining at all times. And of course, it's not actually a this or that. It's always an and conversation, right? It needs to be entertaining and educational. And by educational, I should note, I don't necessarily mean just hard school facts, right? Like I said, it might just be that moment of like, we have a vernacular at the Science Center called wow to whoa moment. So it's taking wow, and then you learn a little something and you're like, whoa, I didn't realize that, right? So, so that's kind of the fundamental key that the organizations have. And it's interesting, you know, as we're trying to tread new ground and do things in different ways, that we explore that, because sometimes we find ourselves in a situation where we don't bear both in mind, and we hear about it. We're like, you know, maybe like, oh, you know, that was really educational, where was the fun of that? Or vice versa, like, oh, that was really a cool experience. I don't know that there was a lot of science in it, you know, or that kind of thing. But again, it doesn't, not everything needs to have deep science or what have you at a science center. It's about how we connect it. It's about the programming that supports it. It's about how we talk about it, because truthfully, you know, science is everywhere, but it's our duty to make sure that it is being pulled out. Sorry,
Yeah.
that was a long-winded answer.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. Maybe staying on that topic to a degree, you know, you talked about one of the age groups that you want to be able to attract is that teen or maybe really young adult kind of age group, which I would imagine is the most difficult age group to attract because maybe they're too cool for that or something, right? So what are some of those strategies that you guys utilize to try to get that, I'll call it that type of generation into the Science Center?
Yeah, you know, that's honestly, that's a work in progress, because we're working through that a little bit. I mean, obviously there's schools that come that bring teens. It's a little bit of a different vibe, because basically it's the teachers making the choice, not the teens. And I think part of it, we actually had a discussion on it recently with our leadership team, where is it really teens choosing not to come, or are there big barriers for them to come? You know, part of it being, you know, our location. It's not right on any form of transit, public transit. It's the zoo train station is the closest, but that's like a 20-30 minute walk from the science center.
It's a ways.
Right. Yeah. And so there's no buses, right? So it's not, if you can't drive, which of course, especially younger teens can't, with an adult in the car. You know, there's that, plus there's the barrier of cost, right? So of course we require admission to get into the building. And there are pathways for those who might not have the means to access it. But teens don't always have that kind of um, money to do that, right? So
Yeah.
so are there those more larger barriers that are preventing teens from coming? These are the things that we have to really look at. The big thing is not, guys like me who are, established career professional making decisions about what teens want. It's about asking them, right?
Yeah.
What is it you want to see? What keeps you from coming to a place like the Science Center? And these kind of things, and actually, hearing from them what is most important to them, and what are actually the barriers for them, right? Because then once we hear that, we can, as the team at Spark, we can talk and make decisions that are going to try our best to eliminate the barriers, while still obviously making sure we're able to operate in a reasonable fashion. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, I think that's a fundamental piece. So that's what we're actually, this fall we're actually kicking off a youth engagement plan, and talking to teens just about coming to the Science Center, how
Yeah.
what barriers do you have, what et cetera, et cetera. So we don't have a specific strategy right now, other than we need to hear from them to advise what our next strategies are going to be.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. It's a lot of sense. Can you tell us, I mean, I assume you do some partnerships with different organizations or
Mhm.
whatnot, and correct me if I'm wrong on that, but what are maybe some of the unique or unexpected partnerships that you guys have done in the past?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, I'm a big believer in organizations, especially organizations that are trying to share a message,
Yeah.
right? Which of course we are. That's our mission, is to connect people to science in meaningful and mind-blowing ways. So to do that, it's always more powerful when you have more voices. More voices creates more noise. It's more resonant, right? And it just inherently brings more audience. It connects people in those, as you said, unexpected ways. So we do have many partners that we work with for our programming. Some of them will probably be a little not surprising. Like obviously we work with the local universities, right, to showcase some of the work that they're doing, and we're trying to do more and more of that, because there's a lot of really really great cutting edge science that happens in Calgary. So how
Yeah.
do we showcase that? So that's probably less exciting, or not, it is exciting. It's less, more expected, I suppose, for lack of a better
Right.
term, because I
Less
know,
unique.
yeah, exactly. But we do try to do a little bit more of those kind of unexpected things. A good example is working with Alberta Health Services. We do one of our school programs that's quite popular is it's called Direct from the Operating Room, where we have a live knee replacement surgery, and it gets beamed into our stage and online, and students watch it, and they get to ask the surgeon questions about it while he's doing the surgery.
Wow.
Yeah, which is gnarly as heck, and it's
Yeah.
very graphic. And like for being a guy with a zoology background, even makes me queasy the first time I watch it. But it's really, really cool. So like that kind of stuff where you can kind of, obviously there's a strong science tie there.
Yeah.
But then even places where the science might not be readily apparent, right? So we just have been working with the government of Alberta to talk about trades, and the science and the trades, which might not just like strike you like when you think of like construction or electricians or plumbers or what have you. We may not think of them as scientific careers, right? But as a matter of fact, they are, because I mean, if a plumber's not thinking about water pressure and
Mhm.
hydrodynamics and things like that, they're not going to be a very successful plumber, right? And carpentry is basically all math, right?
Mhm.
So it's all math and angles and load distribution and things like that. So we worked with the government's support on creating programming and experiences that connect, especially youth, to that, and see that these are uh, important careers, and there's a ton of science in them, and they're pretty cool too. Like, so we have like kiddos like out in our brainasium building um, all kinds of weird and wonderful structures. Just getting acquainted with tools and things like that. Plumbing problems. We have a thing where they're moving around water just to
Yeah.
basically play with it and just build familiarity and understand that their other sciences. So a little bit more unexpected. We're working with places like the Calgary Construction Association and SAIT, right? So more like trades kind of focused programming that might be a little bit unexpected. And also arts programming too. So we don't say STEM, we say STEAM, right? So science, technology, engineering, art, and math. And that's because art is a wonderful vehicle for connecting people to the sciences, right? Because not everyone is a science nerd like me, and that's totally cool, right? But the arts, there's so many beautiful ways that we can connect. Like just understanding in music, for example, the count, right? It's all about timing. It's all about patterns. It's all about how does sound travel? How is sound created, right? So, like for example, we do a program where we partner with Decidedly Jazz Dance Works, talking about the math of dance with schools, which is again a little bit unexpected and really really cool.
Yeah.
And we really showcase that at our annual STEAM festival, Beakerhead, which is coming up in September. So that's all about using the arts to talk about science, which is really really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, good for you guys. You've talked a little bit about this kind of throughout our discussion here, but what's on the horizon for you guys coming up?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, I mentioned Beakerhead coming up next month. That's huge for us. It's going to be a big event and a big festival that we encourage everyone to come and check out. It is going to be wicked. There's going to be all kinds of shows and big art pieces blowing out fire, making lots of music and noise, and it's just going to be a party with all kinds of good food and stuff like that. So it is going to be really a neat experience. And so that's coming up. And then of course, as we get into the holiday season, we have our adult nights, which are going to be are always a big hit. That's as I was kind of talking about when do we do adult programming versus kids programming. Our adult nights that we do bi-monthly are quite popular to that end. Again, kind of a way to explore science in a fun kind of party-like atmosphere. It's a great place for like dates and stuff like that. Our October one is about crime and solving of crime and things like that.
Cool.
And then December, we always do greatest hits from our Spark After Dark series through the year.
Yeah.
And yeah, just in terms of some of our big exhibits that are here for the summer, they're around for another couple weeks in the case of our giant insects, and another week on top of that for our AI exhibit. And then our digital immersion experience around space is going to be closing up at the end of October, and then we'll launch a new digital immersion experience in that gallery for the end of the year. And then of course we'll have our new rotating exhibits coming in as we get into the new year. So there's always never a dull moment.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. If somebody wanted to check out what you guys are doing, or maybe get in contact with you, where would they go for that?
Yeah, so to see what's happening at the Science Centre, I mean, the best place is always our website or our social media. So sparkscience.ca, and Spark is on Instagram, it's on Facebook, it's on X, etc. For myself, if people are interested in learning more about, what's it like to work at a Science Centre or in this industry or anything like that, I'm always happy to
get eaten by a tiger.
Or almost get eaten by a tiger. Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to talk about that, and people can find me on LinkedIn. My profile's public, so that's probably the easiest way to track me down.
Awesome. Well, it's certainly appreciate your time on the podcast here today, and learned a lot about the center, and hopefully people can get out, experience it, and looking forward to seeing what's coming for you guys on the horizon here.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Zach.
You've been listening to Beyond Wealth, Success Unscripted with Matt Calnan. Want to be our next guest? Visit beyondwealthpodcast.ca/guest. See you on the next episode.